Behind the neatly trimmed lawns, sparkling pools, and gated entrances of America's homeowner associations lies a hidden battlefield. On the surface, HOAs promise order, safety, and higher property values. But beneath that polished exterior, thousands of homeowners are finding themselves trapped in a nightmare they never imagined when buying their dream home. What begins as a small disagreement over a mailbox color, a fence, or a landscaping choice can spiral into a full-scale legal war with devastating consequences. This is the untold story of HOA lawsuits, the crushing financial burden, the emotional scars, and the sense of helplessness that so many families face when an association meant to protect them turns against them. For some, it starts with a single letter or fine, but quickly snowballs into tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees, rising HOA dues, and even foreclosure threats. Lives are uprooted, savings wiped out, and futures destroyed. All because of disputes most people would consider petty. But the cost isn't just financial. These battles take a deep psychological toll, leaving homeowners stressed, sleepless, and isolated in their own communities. Neighbors who were once friends become adversaries. Families fracture under the pressure. And the mental health impacts, depression, anxiety, even PTSD linger long after the court cases end. Meanwhile, HOAs use their power, money, and lawyers to tilt the scales in their favor. With little oversight or accountability, they often operate like private governments, enforcing rules selectively and intimidating those who dare to push back. It becomes a David versus Goliath struggle, ordinary homeowners fighting a system designed to wear them down. This is more than a story about property disputes. It's a story about power, control, and the hidden costs of living in what was supposed to be your safe haven home. The hidden war inside HOAs. When most people think of a homeowners association, HOA, they picture a community that keeps the neighborhood clean, enforces rules fairly, and ensures property values stay high. On paper, that's exactly what HOAs are supposed to do. They collect dues, maintain common areas, and set guidelines so that everyone benefits from a well-kept environment. But beneath that polished image lies a reality few outsiders ever see. A silent war taking place inside countless neighborhoods across the country. This hidden war doesn't involve physical battles, but it does involve power struggles, intimidation, and financial ruin. What begins as a small disagreement, say, over the color of your mailbox, the height of your fence, or even the type of flowers you plant, can quickly snowball into a drawn-out dispute. Suddenly, a homeowner who thought they were simply living in a peaceful community finds themselves pitted against a powerful board with deep pockets and legal backing. HOAs, after all, are not just casual neighborhood groups. They operate like mini-governments with the authority to issue fines, place liens, and even foreclose on homes. For homeowners, that means a single rule violation can grow into a mountain of legal problems. The board may argue that they are protecting the integrity of the community, but in reality, many disputes escalate because of power, pride, and the desire to control. What makes this war so insidious is that it happens quietly. From the outside, everything looks normal. The lawns are mowed, the pool is open, and the homes are well kept. Neighbors might not even realize that a family down the street is fighting to keep their house. Behind closed doors, though, lawsuits are filed, legal fees skyrocket, and families are pushed to the edge, financially and emotionally. The scariest part? It doesn't take much to become a target. A simple rule violation or disagreement with the board can ignite years of legal and personal battles. This is why so many call it a hidden war. Because until you're caught in it, you'd never believe how destructive and relentless an HOA can be. The dream home nightmare. For most families, buying a home is the ultimate dream. It's more than just four walls and a roof. It's security, stability, and a place to create lasting memories. Many people are even drawn to neighborhoods with homeowners associations because they believe the HOA will protect that dream. The promise is simple: tidy streets, well-kept lawns, and higher property values. On the surface, it looks like the perfect environment to raise a family or enjoy retirement. But for many homeowners, that dream quickly turns into a nightmare. Imagine waking up one morning to find a letter taped to your door. It's not a friendly reminder. It's a violation notice. Maybe your trash can was left outside too long, or your fence is 1 inch taller than the allowed height. The letter warns you that if you don't correct the issue immediately, fines will begin to pile up. At first, you think it's just a misunderstanding. Surely, this can be worked out with a quick phone call. Except it doesn't stop there. Soon, the fines increase. Another letter arrives, threatening legal action. Before you know it, you're facing a lawsuit over something as small as the color of your mailbox or the type of grass in your yard. What once felt like your sanctuary, the place you worked so hard to own, now feels like a trap closing in on you. This is the dark reality that thousands of homeowners across the country face. The dream home becomes the source of constant stress and anxiety. Instead of enjoying weekends with family, homeowners spend their time fighting legal battles, draining their savings to pay attorneys, and worrying if they'll even get to keep their house. The worst part? Many of these disputes aren't about major safety concerns or community threats. They're about minor, often petty issues that spiral out of control because the HOA refuses to back down. Boards sometimes see enforcement as a show of power rather than a matter of fairness. And once you're on their radar, it can feel impossible to escape. Neighbors you once waved to can suddenly turn cold, either siding with the HOA or avoiding you out of fear they'll be next. What was supposed to be a supportive community becomes a hostile environment. The dream home, once a symbol of success and comfort, turns into a place of dread, proof that living under an HOA can sometimes be less about community spirit and more about surviving constant conflict. The crushing financial avalanche. When people hear about HOA disputes, they often assume the stakes are small, maybe a few fines or some neighborhood drama. But once an HOA decides to take legal action, the financial consequences for homeowners can be devastating. What starts with a minor disagreement can quickly snowball into a financial avalanche that wipes out savings, retirement funds, and sometimes even the home itself. The first blow usually comes in the form of legal fees. Hiring a lawyer isn't cheap, and most homeowners aren't prepared for the costs of litigation. Just to respond to an HOA's lawsuit, you may need to pay thousands of dollars in retainer fees. Then there are court filings, discovery costs, and hourly charges for every letter, phone call, or court appearance your lawyer makes. Before you know it, you're staring at bills that rival the price of a new car. But it doesn't stop there. HOAs often have insurance policies or use community funds to cover their own legal expenses, giving them an endless war chest. Meanwhile, the homeowner is paying out of pocket. Even if you win a case, the financial strain can be life-changing. One homeowner in Texas reported spending over $150,000 in legal fees, all because of a dispute over the style of a backyard fence. Next comes the hidden financial traps. While the lawsuit drags on, HOAs may increase dues or impose special assessments on all homeowners in the neighborhood, including the one being sued. That means you're not only paying your own legal bills, but also indirectly funding the HOA's fight against you. And if the case gets attention, property values in the community can drop, making it impossible to sell or refinance your home for relief. Then there's the long-term financial devastation. Many families end up dipping into retirement savings, draining college funds, or maxing out credit cards just to keep up with mounting costs. For some, bankruptcy becomes the only option. Others face foreclosure if the HOA places a lien on their property for unpaid dues or fines. Imagine losing your home, the very place you were trying to protect, because of an escalating legal battle. The ripple effects extend far beyond the case itself. Families who plan to save for their children's future find those dreams shattered. Retirees who thought they were financially secure are forced to go back to work. Even those who survive the lawsuit with their home intact often emerge financially crippled, with ruined credit scores and years of debt to repay. This is why HOA disputes are so dangerous. It's not just the stress of going to court. It's the way costs pile up, one on top of another, until the burden becomes unbearable. A single disagreement over something as trivial as lawn height or mailbox color can ultimately cost more than the home itself. For many, that's the cruelest irony of all. The fight to protect their property ends up destroying their financial future. Hidden financial traps. When people imagine fighting their HOA, they usually think about lawyer bills and court fees. And while those are crushing enough, what many homeowners don't realize is that there are hidden financial traps built into the very structure of HOA disputes. These traps often catch families off guard and make escaping the battle nearly impossible. One of the most common traps is the special assessment. HOAs have the power to charge homeowners extra fees whenever they claim the community needs additional funds, whether for repairs, upgrades, or, in some cases, to cover legal costs. If the board decides to use HOA money to fight you in court, they can spread that expense across the entire neighborhood. That means you're not only paying your own legal bills but also contributing to the HOA's war chest against you. Refusing to pay the assessment can lead to fines, liens, and eventually foreclosure. Another trap is increased HOA dues during litigation. Lawsuits are expensive, and many associations raise dues to keep up with costs. Even if your case is the reason for the increase, you're required to pay the higher amount. Falling behind, even by a few months, gives the HOA grounds to penalize you further, adding late fees and interest that can balloon into thousands of dollars. Then there's the issue of property value depreciation. While your lawsuit is ongoing, word spreads quickly in the neighborhood and sometimes even makes it into public records. Potential buyers may shy away from purchasing homes in a community that seems unstable or embroiled in legal conflicts. Realtors know this too and may steer clients elsewhere. For the homeowner at the center of the fight, this means selling or refinancing the home to get financial relief becomes nearly impossible. You're stuck, unable to leave, but financially drained by staying. Another little-known trap is the loser pays clause, often buried in HOA governing documents. This means that if you lose the case, you could be forced to cover not only your legal fees but also the HOA's. Suddenly, what felt like a winnable dispute carries the risk of doubling your financial burden. Even homeowners with strong cases are often pressured into settlements because the stakes are so high. The financial traps don't end when the case does. Many homeowners face credit damage because of liens or unpaid dues during the dispute. A lien can stay on your record for years, making it harder to secure loans, buy another home, or even rent an apartment. Bankruptcy is sometimes the only way out, leaving a permanent mark on financial stability. The invisible scars, emotional and psychological toll. When people hear about HOA disputes, they often focus on the financial side, the lawsuits, the legal bills, and the risk of losing a home. But what often goes unnoticed is the emotional and psychological toll these battles leave behind. For many homeowners, the stress doesn't just drain their bank accounts. It consumes their peace of mind and slowly erodes their well-being. It usually starts with something small: a violation letter, a fine, or a warning notice. At first, you tell yourself it's just paperwork and can be fixed. But as the dispute grows, so does the anxiety. Suddenly, every trip to the mailbox feels like a moment of dread. Will there be another letter? Another threat? Another bill? The simple act of checking your mail becomes a trigger for stress. Over time, this constant tension begins to affect everyday life. Homeowners describe sleepless nights, racing thoughts, and the sinking feeling of being trapped in their own homes. Instead of enjoying their living space, they feel watched, judged, and punished. The home, meant to be a safe haven, turns into a place of fear. The toll extends to families as well. Spouses argue over how to handle the mounting stress. Parents worry about how the tension will affect their children. Kids may overhear conversations about losing the house or see the emotional strain on their parents, creating a ripple effect of anxiety. What should be a stable, loving environment becomes a battleground that slowly chips away at family unity. Relationships with neighbors often suffer, too. People who were once friendly can quickly turn distant or hostile, especially if they side with the HOA. Some homeowners report feeling completely isolated, cut off from the very community they once joined for a sense of belonging. That isolation adds to feelings of depression and helplessness. In the worst cases, prolonged disputes lead to serious mental health struggles. Depression, anxiety disorders, and even symptoms of PTSD have been reported by homeowners who endured years of litigation and harassment. The constant pressure of fighting an organization with more power and resources creates a sense of hopelessness that can linger long after the case ends. These emotional scars are harder to measure than financial losses, but they're just as real, and sometimes even more damaging. Money can be earned back, but peace of mind, trust in your neighbors, and the joy of homeownership are not so easily restored. For many, the psychological cost of an HOA battle remains long after the legal fight is over. Family and community strain. One of the most painful consequences of an HOA dispute is the way it slowly tears apart families and communities. What starts as a disagreement over a rule or fine quickly becomes more than just a legal fight. It seeps into relationships, changes how people see each other, and creates rifts that can last for years. Inside the home, families feel the weight first. The stress of dealing with lawsuits, letters, and financial pressure often spills into daily life. Couples who once felt secure in their dream home may find themselves arguing constantly. One partner pushing to fight back, the other urging to settle just to make the nightmare stop. Conversations that should be about family dinners or weekend plans are instead dominated by talk of court dates, lawyers, and bills. Children are not immune to this tension either. They might overhear parents worrying about losing the house, or notice the stress written on their faces. What should be a safe, stable home environment turns into a space filled with worry and uncertainty. Some kids even experience embarrassment when classmates or friends learn about their family's legal troubles, leading to isolation or shame. But the strain doesn't stop with the family. It spreads into the broader community as well. Neighbors who once chatted at the mailbox or waved in passing can suddenly take sides. Some may quietly support the homeowner in conflict, while others align themselves with the HOA, believing the rules must be enforced. This division fractures the sense of togetherness that HOAs are supposed to create. Over time, the community begins to feel less like a neighborhood and more like a battlefield. Those siding with the HOA may start avoiding or even shunning the homeowner, worried that showing support will put them in the board's crosshairs next. The result is a chilling atmosphere where trust evaporates and fear takes its place. In many reported cases, homeowners describe feeling like outcasts in their own neighborhoods. Friends turn distant, neighbors stop speaking, and simple community gatherings become uncomfortable. The place that was meant to be a welcoming environment instead feels hostile and cold. The saddest part of the strain is that it's often over something small. A mailbox, a paint color, or a fence. Yet the fallout can destroy friendships, weaken family bonds, and leave lasting bitterness in the community. By the time the dust settles, even if the legal case is resolved, the social fabric of the neighborhood is torn beyond repair. Mental health fallout. While financial losses and broken relationships are devastating, perhaps the most overlooked consequence of HOA disputes is the mental health fallout. For many homeowners, the constant pressure of fighting an association doesn't just create temporary stress. It leaves lasting psychological scars that can linger long after the legal battles end. The process often begins with anxiety. At first, it's the dread of opening the mailbox or answering the phone, knowing another violation notice or legal letter could be waiting. This daily anticipation of conflict builds into chronic stress. Homeowners report sleepless nights, racing thoughts, and a constant knot in the stomach, as though they're under attack in their own home. Over time, what was once a peaceful place becomes a trigger for fear. As disputes escalate, depression frequently follows. The financial strain, isolation from neighbors, and constant feeling of being targeted can erode hope. Homeowners describe feeling trapped, unable to sell their property, unable to move, and unable to find relief from the barrage of demands. This sense of helplessness often evolves into sadness, loss of motivation, and even withdrawal from family and social life. Some cases are so severe that homeowners develop symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. Years of legal threats, intimidation, and harassment can condition a person to live in a heightened state of fear, even after the conflict ends. The sound of a knock on the door or a letter in the mailbox can trigger flashbacks of their ordeal. In extreme cases, people have reported panic attacks, nightmares, and lasting distrust of community organizations. The impact is not limited to the homeowner alone. Spouses may experience secondary stress, watching their partner's mental health decline while feeling powerless to stop it. Children can absorb the tension as well, internalizing fears of instability or even associating home with conflict rather than safety. This ripple effect shows how HOA battles don't just harm individuals, they scar entire families emotionally. What makes this fallout particularly damaging is the lack of support. Unlike financial losses, which can sometimes be recovered, emotional wounds are harder to heal. Many homeowners are left without counseling, community backing, or understanding from outsiders who see HOA disputes as trivial. To those living it, however, the trauma is anything but small. In the end, the mental health costs may outlast the financial ones. A family might recover financially after years of struggle, but the constant fear, broken trust, and anxiety tied to their home can remain for a lifetime. For many, the true cost of an HOA lawsuit isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in sleepless nights, broken peace, and the invisible scars left behind. The HOA's playbook: power, politics, and perpetual litigation. To understand why so many homeowners lose battles against their HOA, you need to look at the strategies HOAs use. Over time, many associations have developed what feels like a playbook, a set of tactics designed to intimidate, overwhelm, and wear down residents who resist their authority. For homeowners, it often feels less like a fair process and more like a carefully staged game they can never win. One of the most common tools in this playbook is intimidation. It often starts with official-looking letters full of legal jargon, deadlines, and threats of fines or liens. For the average homeowner, the language itself can feel terrifying, creating immediate pressure to comply, even if the demand seems unreasonable. Some HOAs also escalate quickly, moving from minor fines to legal action far faster than expected, signaling that they are willing to go the distance. Another tactic is selective enforcement. While rules are supposed to apply equally to all residents, HOAs sometimes target specific homeowners while ignoring violations elsewhere. A cracked driveway in one yard might be overlooked, while the same issue in another yard sparks a fine and legal threats. This selective pressure can make homeowners feel singled out, fueling resentment and hopelessness. Perhaps the biggest weapon HOAs wield is their deep pockets. Associations often have legal counsel on retainer, funded by the dues of every homeowner in the community. This means the HOA can pursue lengthy litigation without personally shouldering the costs, while the individual homeowner pays out of pocket. It's a David versus Goliath scenario where the HOA almost always has more resources, making it easier to drag out cases until the resident either surrenders or goes bankrupt. The structure of HOAs also creates a lack of accountability. Boards are usually made up of volunteers, but with significant authority to fine, sue, and enforce rules. In some cases, this power breeds politics, favoritism, and even personal vendettas disguised as rule enforcement. With little outside oversight, homeowners often find themselves trapped in disputes where the board acts as judge, jury, and executioner. Finally, HOAs sometimes rely on perpetual litigation as a pressure tactic. Even if a case is resolved, new complaints or violations may arise, pulling homeowners back into conflict again and again. The goal is often not just to enforce rules, but to exhaust the homeowner until they give in completely. For residents, this playbook creates a devastating reality. The rules of the game are stacked against them from the start. Fighting feels less like seeking justice and more like surviving a system designed to break them. The David versus Goliath dynamic. When a homeowner takes on their HOA, it often feels like stepping into a modern-day David versus Goliath battle. On one side is the individual homeowner, armed with limited savings, limited legal knowledge, and a desperate need to protect their home. On the other side stands the HOA, backed by lawyers, funded by the collective dues of the entire community, and armed with a system of rules and powers designed to keep them in control. The imbalance is staggering. The first disadvantage homeowners face is resources. Most families don't have tens of thousands of dollars lying around to fight prolonged lawsuits. Legal battles drag on for months, even years, and every step costs money. HOAs, however, often have lawyers on retainer and insurance coverage to absorb expenses. They can afford to play the long game, knowing that time is on their side. The longer the case drags on, the more financial pressure falls on the homeowner. Next is the structural advantage HOAs hold. Governing documents often include clauses that heavily favor the association, such as loser pays rules requiring homeowners to cover the HOA's legal costs if they lose. In practice, this makes fighting back a dangerous gamble. Even when homeowners are confident they're right, the risk of financial ruin looms so large that many choose to settle rather than stand their ground. There's also the issue of perception. Courts and even neighbors sometimes assume HOAs act in the best interest of the community. Homeowners, meanwhile, are seen as troublemakers simply for resisting. This tilt in perception gives HOAs even more leverage, allowing them to frame disputes as protecting the neighborhood rather than punishing individuals. Emotionally, the dynamic is just as crushing. Imagine standing alone in a courtroom against a polished team of attorneys who file motion after motion, knowing every delay drains your bank account further. For many homeowners, it feels less like a fair fight and more like being cornered by a machine designed to grind them down. And yet, some homeowners still fight. Like David facing Goliath, they push back not because the odds are in their favor, but because giving up means surrendering their home, their rights, or their dignity. Sometimes, with persistence and the right evidence, homeowners do win. But those victories are rare, and they often come at great personal and financial cost. In the end, the David versus Goliath dynamic explains why so many HOA disputes end in heartbreak. The power imbalance is so severe that even the strongest homeowners struggle to withstand the fight. It's not just a legal battle, it's survival against a system designed to crush resistance. The lack of oversight and accountability. One of the most troubling aspects of HOA disputes is the almost complete lack of oversight and accountability. On the surface, HOAs are meant to function as community organizations, run by boards of volunteers who act in the best interest of homeowners. But in reality, many operate like unregulated mini-governments, able to enforce rules, collect money, and even take homes away with very few checks on their power. Unlike city or state governments, HOAs are not held to the same democratic or legal standards. Board members can be elected with very low voter turnout, and in some cases, a small group of individuals essentially controls the fate of an entire community. Once in power, these boards often have broad authority to interpret rules, levy fines, and pursue legal action. If those decisions are unfair or biased, homeowners have little recourse beyond expensive lawsuits. The lack of external regulation only makes matters worse. While state laws vary, most provide minimal oversight of HOA boards. Agencies that oversee housing or consumer protection rarely intervene in HOA disputes, dismissing them as private matters. This leaves homeowners stuck in a system where the same board that accuses them of violations also acts as judge and enforcer. It's a clear conflict of interest that tips the balance heavily in the HOA's favor. Accountability is also weakened by financial opacity. HOAs manage large sums of money through dues and special assessments, but not all boards are transparent about how those funds are used. In extreme cases, homeowners have discovered funds being mismanaged or worse, misappropriated, with little ability to hold anyone accountable. Yet, when homeowners fall behind on payments, boards can act swiftly, placing liens or initiating foreclosure. The rules are enforced strictly on residents but loosely on those in charge. The problem of selective enforcement also highlights the lack of oversight. Some homeowners may be penalized harshly for minor violations, while others are ignored, often due to favoritism, personal grudges, or politics within the board. Without an impartial body to appeal to, targeted homeowners are left vulnerable, feeling powerless against an authority that can bend the rules at will. Ultimately, the absence of proper oversight creates a dangerous environment. HOAs can overstep, misuse power, and escalate conflicts without fear of real consequences. For homeowners, this means that even the most trivial disagreement can spiral into financial ruin and emotional distress, all under the control of a board that answers to no higher authority. Until stronger accountability measures are introduced, HOAs will continue to operate in this gray area of power, leaving countless families at risk.